The first thing I noticed was the mud. It was streaked across the hardwood in lazy arcs, leading from the front door to the kitchen like a trail of secrets. Her black heels, soaked from rain, were carelessly kicked off by the wall. One still had a broken strap dangling like a torn ribbon. I didn't hear her come in. I didn't even hear the door open. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a half-eaten sandwich I'd made 6 hours ago. My phone was on the table. Still no reply. No, sorry, got caught up. No, I'll be home late. Just radio silence. And now, muddy footprints. She appeared in the doorway like a ghost. Hair frizzy, eyes swollen, makeup smudged into a kind of accidental war paint. In one hand, she was holding her phone. In the other, his blazer. A man's blazer. Not mine. I looked at it, then up at her. She didn't flinch. What is that? I asked, even though I already knew. She blinked. It's Blaine's. I didn't want it to get left behind. I didn't say anything, just nodded slowly, like I was in a courtroom and the defense had just presented its final piece of evidence. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable, like I was the one who left, like I was the one who disappeared for 13 hours without a word, came home looking like a storm survivor, and brought back another man's jacket like some kind of trophy. Then she sat across from me, wet hair dripping on the table, elbows on the wood like she owned the place, like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of our kitchen. And then, the line that made something inside me snap. Can we just not make this into a thing right now? Right now? That was the moment I realized she didn't think she had anything to explain. She thought I was the problem. She sat there like we were discussing dinner plans. No tension in her shoulders. No shame in her eyes. Just damp hair dripping down her cheek and her fingers absently rubbing the edge of Blaine's blazer, as if the fabric gave her comfort. I watched a single drop of rainwater fall from the sleeve and land on our oak table, the one we picked out together on a rainy Sunday, back when Sundays meant something. I didn't have signal, she said after a beat, voice low and tired. The weather was insane. My phone was dead. It wasn't even that kind of party, Kurt. I should have stopped her right there. I should have demanded she look me in the eye and say exactly what kind of party it was. But instead, I asked the dumbest question imaginable. Did you sleep there? She nodded, too quickly. Yeah, it got late. Blaine offered the guest room. The guest room, I repeated, like I was reading lines from a bad play. Kurt, she said sharply, suddenly defensive. This doesn't have to turn into something. You're spiraling over nothing. Again. Nothing. She called it nothing. A vanishing act, a 13-hour blackout, showing up drenched in another man's clothing. And somehow, I was overreacting? I stared at her. Not the woman I married. Not the girl who used to fall asleep on my chest mid-movie. This version of her felt edited. Like someone had swapped out the real Lana and uploaded a version that knew how to mimic her smile, but not her guilt. She stood up, blazer in hand, and walked toward the laundry room. As if the conversation was over. As if tossing it in the wash would rinse away what she did. But that jacket. It was too small for Blaine. That didn't hit me until her hand was on the laundry door. Blaine was built like a linebacker. This was slim fit, narrow in the shoulders. Whoever it belonged to, it wasn't Blaine. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She turned back toward me. You're not going to start digging through things again, are you? She asked flatly. Because that's not healthy, Curtis. We talked about this. And that was it. That was the game she chose to play. Gaslight the man who stayed up all night watching the driveway, worried she was in a ditch somewhere. She didn't explain the jacket. She didn't explain the bracelet. She didn't even explain the makeup. She just made me the villain in a story I didn't know I was in. And the worst part? I still hadn't asked the one question clawing at the back of my throat. Why did her wedding ring end up in the pocket of a stranger's coat? She tossed the blazer into the laundry bin like it meant nothing, like it wasn't stitched with the threads of everything I feared. As the door to the laundry room creaked shut, I stood there staring at the bin, my chest burning. I couldn't stop thinking about it. How it hung off her shoulder like a borrowed secret. How she clutched it tighter than she had held me in weeks. When she left the room, I moved. Not like a man with a plan. More like a man drowning who finally saw the surface. My hands shook as I pulled the blazer from the pile. Rain still clung to the sleeves. Cologne I didn't recognize seeped from the fabric. It wasn't Blaine's scent, or at least not the one I remembered from the office holiday party. This one was sharper, darker, like something you'd wear to a rooftop bar where lies are currency. I checked the inside pocket. My heart dropped. Her wedding ring was there. Not lost. Not left behind. Not slipped off during a game of beer pong or whatever fantasy she thought I'd believe. Placed. Carefully. Deliberately. As if she needed both hands free. As if it got in the way. But that wasn't all. There was a napkin, crumpled and damp, with smudged black ink that read, "Call me if you change your mind." R. That's when my stomach turned. Not because of what the note said, but because of what it meant. It meant that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a drunk mistake. This was a choice. A night that included a goodbye. A night that was supposed to stay secret, until it didn't. I heard her coming back and stuffed the jacket back in the bin, the ring still inside. I didn't want her to know I saw it. Not yet. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. What she had become. She stepped into the kitchen with a towel wrapped around her hair and that same eerie calm in her voice. "You want pancakes or something?" she asked. I was thinking of just sleeping for a bit, then maybe going to yoga. I nearly laughed. Yoga. She just came home from cheating, or something worse, and now she wanted to stretch it out and call it a Sunday. I told her I wasn't hungry. Told her I had work to do. But really, I spent the next 3 hours in the guest room staring at the wall, playing it all back like a film reel from hell. The text, the coat, the missing ring, the napkin, her tone. I picked up my phone. No calls. No missed messages from R. But that's when I remembered something she told me last month. That she was planning a team reset weekend soon. A professional development thing. She said they'd all be off-grid, no cell service, lots of nature. Guess where it was supposed to happen? Blaine's cabin. Guess what weekend it was? This one. So now, I had to ask myself something I wasn't ready for. If this night had been planned weeks ago, down to the lies and backup lies, what else had she rehearsed? And who the hell is R? I didn't sleep. Not even close. I just laid there, eyes wide open in a dim guest room that still smelled like the lavender candle Lana used when she wanted the house to feel cozy. Ironic, really. The only thing that smelled like us anymore was the past. I kept hearing her voice from earlier echoing in my skull. That casual, offhand tone. I might sleep a bit, maybe go to yoga. Like the night before hadn't left bruises I couldn't see. Like there wasn't a stranger's coat sitting downstairs with a wedding ring inside it. I wasn't even sure what I was waiting for. I didn't want an argument. I didn't want some melodramatic confession. I just wanted her to be honest. Even if it shattered me, I wanted her to say it. To stop pretending we were okay. That she was okay. Mid-afternoon, she came knocking on the guest room door, like we were roommates, not partners. She peeked in. "Hey, you've been quiet all morning. Is everything okay?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled. "Yeah, just tired." She nodded, then walked away. That was the moment it clicked. She wanted me quiet. She wanted the silence. Because silence meant survival. Silence meant no questions, no consequences. So I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I lied back. I got up, made coffee, asked how her yoga class went, even though I knew damn well she didn't go. She blinked, surprised by my sudden calm, and said, "It was good. Grounding." That word again. Rehearsed, distant, sterile. I asked who all was at the party. She listed names I recognized. Not a single R. I nodded like I believed her. But later that night, when she fell asleep on the couch with her laptop still open, I sat beside her in the dark and opened her recent docs. It wasn't snooping. Not anymore. It was survival. She'd left a Google Doc open titled Retreat Schedule. Not retreat like yoga or reflection. Retreat like escape. There were time blocks, meals, bonding exercises. A late-night bonfire listed simply as Let Go Hour. Each name had a role. Blaine, host. Sarah, planner. And there it was. Last on the list. Reese, closer. Closer. I sat there, staring at that one word. Not speaker. Not motivator. Not coordinator. Closer. Like someone closing a deal. Closing a chapter. Closing a marriage. That was it. I didn't need cameras. I didn't need a GPS tracker. I didn't need to follow her around with binoculars like some sad sitcom idiot. She'd written it all down. They weren't celebrating a campaign win. They were celebrating detachment. A weekend to emotionally unplug. Reset. Test limits. And my wife wasn't just participating. She helped organize it. I looked over at her sleeping face, her head resting on the same pillow I kissed her goodnight on for 6 years straight. And I knew what tomorrow needed to be. Not another day of pretending, but the first day of unraveling. The next morning, I pretended nothing was wrong. That's the strange thing about betrayal. It doesn't always come with screaming or smashed plates. Sometimes it's quiet, surgical. You smile while bleeding out. You brew coffee while wondering who she kissed. You say, "Have a great day," while mentally drafting your exit. She left the house at 9:12 a.m., wearing gym clothes and a fake expression that mimicked sincerity. "Grabbing smoothies with Kels," she said. "Then errands." I smiled. Sounds fun. The moment the front door shut, I locked it behind her. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I opened her laptop again, this time methodically. No more guilt. No hesitation. If I was going to dig through her digital life, I wasn't going to flinch doing it. And it didn't take long. She hadn't closed the doc from last night, just minimized it. But this time, I noticed something new. A folder buried in her drive called Team Uplift, Private. I clicked it. Inside were dozens of PDFs and spreadsheets, all labeled in the same vague, cult-like language. Emotional Release Protocol. Exit Ladder Framework. Reframing Intimacy Models. One doc was titled, "When They Ask, Smile." It read like a manual for controlled separation. Emotional detachment dressed up as self-care. And her initials were on nearly every comment, suggesting edits, leaving notes like, "Should we move this to earlier in the weekend? We need to make sure partners don't feel triggered. Keep language soft. Can we make Reese's segment more open-ended?" That last one haunted me. I remembered the napkin in the coat pocket. "Call me if you change your mind." Reese wasn't some vague coworker. He was the closer. He was the one who got people to cross the final line. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't paranoid. I was being groomed for disposal. I shut the laptop and sat on the floor of our living room, heart pounding, head spinning. Not because she was leaving me. That part didn't scare me anymore. What scared me was how calculated it all was. How polished. How curated. Like someone had taken my marriage and scrubbed it clean of mess so it could be repackaged and sold back to her under a new name. A text came in. I reached for her tablet. It was synced to her phone, a luxury convenience she never thought would betray her. The message lit up the screen like a match in a dry field. "Reese, you were incredible. Hope you're not feeling guilty. This is what growth feels like. Let me know if tonight's still on." She didn't reply, but she didn't delete it either, which told me everything. There was no remorse, no cover-up. She was just riding the high of new attention, of being someone else with someone new. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just sat there, holding her tablet, staring at those words as if they were carved into stone. Because now I wasn't asking myself if she cheated. I was asking, how many versions of me had she already practiced leaving? That night, I didn't bring up the message. I didn't ask who Reese was. I didn't mention the napkin, the retreat documents, or her ring buried in another man's coat pocket. I simply sat across from her at the dinner table, nodding along as she told me about her long day. Apparently, smoothies turned into errands, errands turned into an impromptu coffee with Kelsey, and somewhere in that story was a yoga class she conveniently forgot to mention earlier. I asked her if it helped. "You know, the yoga." She looked up from her plate and blinked, like she didn't expect that question. "Yeah," she said after a beat. "It really helped clear my head." I smiled. "Good. You've seemed distracted lately." She froze, just for a second, then went back to cutting her food. She was starting to sense it, the shift, that I wasn't asking for answers anymore. I was studying the lies themselves. Later that evening, I watched her disappear into the bathroom for one of her hour-long showers. Something she started doing more often after the retreat. She said it was to decompress. I used to believe her. Now I counted the minutes. While the water ran, I sat at her laptop again. I knew the risks. If she came out early, if I didn't close the tab in time, it didn't matter anymore. My heart wasn't racing from fear. It was racing from control, because I was finally the one keeping secrets. This time, I opened her email. Not her primary inbox. The alt one. The one she used for newsletters and online shopping and low-priority work stuff. She'd once joked that it was her burner inbox. I thought she meant for coupons. It wasn't coupons. There were 3 new messages, all from the same sender. Recalibrate.works.com. Each one was signed R. Subject lines like, "Unpack later." It was real. "Tonight, confirm?" She hadn't replied to any of them. Not yet. But she hadn't deleted them either. One message read, "The version of you I saw this weekend. That was the real one." Don't let the weight of routine pull you back. You've already let go once. Let it stay gone. It made me sick how romantic he made betrayal sound. Like abandoning your partner was some form of spiritual rebirth. Like lying to the person who stayed up every night memorizing your coffee order was self-care. But what really destroyed me wasn't the messages themselves. It was the folder she kept on her desktop titled June Ideas. Inside were drafts. Not for work. For letters. Letters addressed to me. None finished. None sent. But all of them had the same haunting start. Curtis, this isn't about you. It never was. Each version of the letter tried a different tone. Calm, warm, detached, poetic. As if she couldn't quite decide how to let me down. Or maybe she was rehearsing, over and over, what it would sound like to leave me without technically being the bad guy. That's when I realized. She wasn't unsure about cheating. She was unsure how to exit the story without looking like the villain. So I gave her space. I let her believe I was still blind. And the next morning, I printed one of the emails from Reese. Just one. Folded it neatly. Tucked it inside her gym bag, right on top, where she'd see it as soon as she opened it at yoga. No note. No confrontation. Just evidence. And when she returned later that afternoon, her face pale and stiff, I was already sitting on the porch, reading, waiting, and smiling, because now the silence belonged to me. She didn't say anything when she walked through the door. I heard her keys hit the counter, a soft metallic clatter like the start of a song we both knew the lyrics to but neither wanted to sing. Her footsteps were hesitant, careful, like she didn't know what room I was in or what version of me might be waiting in it. She found me on the porch. I didn't look up. I just flipped another page in the book I wasn't reading. She stood there for a moment, wrapped in tension, gripping her water bottle like it was a weapon or a shield, maybe both. Then she broke the silence. How much do you know? Not what's wrong. Not can we talk. Not even a lie to stall for time. Just that. Cold. Surgical. Calculated. I kept my eyes on the book. Enough. She sat down across from me, arms crossed tight. Not from the weather. It was warm, but from something else. Something unraveling behind her eyes. You went through my stuff, she said, like I was the one who crossed a line. No, I said calmly. I went through my marriage. Yours just happened to be hiding inside it. She didn't reply right away. Her jaw tensed, the silence thick between us. And for a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt. Not shame. Relief. Like she'd finally been caught and no longer had to pretend. Like she'd spent so long rehearsing exits that she welcomed the moment someone finally kicked the door open for her. You shouldn't have done that, she said, quieter now. I didn't plant the emails, I replied. I didn't shove my ring into someone else's jacket. I didn't write letters practicing how to tell you goodbye. She flinched. That hit her. She hadn't expected me to go that far. You read those. I nodded. Every single draft. She looked away, eyes glassy. I was scared. You were meticulous, I corrected. Scared people hide. You outlined your retreat like it was a product launch. You scheduled your emotional betrayal in 30-minute blocks and had backup plans in place in case someone cried too early. She looked like she wanted to argue, like some part of her was ready to launch into a TED talk about boundaries and growth and identity. But she didn't. Not yet. So I stood up. Slowly. Not angry. Not loud. Just steady. I didn't confront you to win, I told her. This isn't a courtroom. I'm not asking for an apology. I wanted to see what version of the story you'd tell me now that the script is gone. She stood too, suddenly desperate. Kurt, I didn't sleep with him. It came out so fast, like a reflex. Like she thought that was the magic phrase that would rewind the last few days and stitch everything back together. But I wasn't looking for the usual betrayal. I was looking at the one she didn't even see as betrayal at all. That's not the part that broke us, I said. You left the relationship before your body ever did. Her lip trembled. I walked past her, back into the house. Not slamming doors. Not raising my voice. Just walking away. And that silence, the same one she once used to keep secrets, was now the loudest thing in the room. But she wasn't done. Not even close. Because at midnight, she woke me up. And what she said then, it changed everything. She knocked on the bedroom door just after midnight. Not a loud knock. A soft, almost childlike tap, like she was scared of what version of me might answer. I was already awake, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling and listening to the quiet breathing of a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I opened the door and she stood there, barefoot, hoodie on, sleeves pulled over her hands the way she did when she was nervous in college. "I can't sleep," she said. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like she was stepping into memory. "I didn't know how to leave you without losing everything," she said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. And I know that sounds twisted, but it's the truth. I kept waiting for something to fix itself, or break hard enough that I wouldn't have to be the one to do it. I sat in the chair across from her, calm, detached. "I know," I said, "and I let you." She looked up. That surprised her. I felt it. I continued. "Every time you came home and smiled just enough to avoid questions. Every time you pulled away mid-sentence. Every time I asked how you were, and you said fine with that voice that wasn't yours anymore." She wiped her eyes. I didn't hand her a tissue. I let her sit with it. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. I nodded. "But you stopped choosing me." That silence returned, but this time it was mutual. It wasn't a wall between us. It was air. Honest, hard air. And then, finally, I stood up and sat beside her. "I don't hate you, Lana. I'm not here to destroy you. I just realized that loving someone doesn't mean letting them hollow you out. I lost myself trying to keep us afloat." She didn't respond right away, but when she did, her voice cracked. "What do we do now?" It was the first time she said, "we," and sounded uncertain, vulnerable, human. I took a deep breath. Not angry, not bitter, just real. "We figure out who we are apart. And maybe, just maybe, one day that leads us back to something better. Or maybe it doesn't. But I need to be whole again. And I think you do too." She nodded, crying quietly. Not begging, not bargaining, just understanding. And that was it. No dramatic breakup. No suitcase on the porch. No screaming match at 3 a.m. The next morning, we made coffee together. Not as husband and wife. Just as two people who had shared something important and knew it was time to let go with grace. I moved out 2 weeks later. Got a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just mine. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. Not because everything was fixed, but because I finally stopped pretending it was broken in a way I had to fix alone.